You ever think about someone the whole world treated like shit, but turned out to be right all along? Yeah, this thread's about to get real. Let's dive into the people who deserve a massive apology from all of us. Michael Berkheimer. He was an Ohio man who, in 2017, was at a restaurant eating boneless wings only to unknowingly encounter a bone. He tried to throw it back up at the restaurant. Unsuccessfully, and after 3 days of not feeling well, he went to the emergency room only to find out that there was a bone fragment that tore a hole in his esophagus and caused an infection, requiring 2 medically induced comas and a week-long ICU stay. He, of course, sued. None of the courts were helpful, so he took it all the way to the state Supreme Court. What did they say? Last fall, they ruled 4-3 that boneless wings refers to a style of cooking, not the wing literally being boneless. I'd understand if they had said it should have been boneless, but mistakes happen. Penalize the restaurant or the supplier. But straight up saying boneless doesn't mean boneless is insane. Only in Ohio. In the majority opinion, Justice Joe Dieters wrote that the restaurant wasn't liable, when the consumer could have reasonably expected and guarded against the presence of the injurious substance in the food, but there was nothing more he could have done. He not only wasn't eating the wings haphazardly, he was cutting them into thirds, taking more precautions than most would. Man swallowed a bone fragment in a boneless wing, needed 2 medically induced comas to recover, and the Ohio State Supreme Court said bones are to be expected, 'cause chickens have bones. Boneless only refers to the cooking method. Emmett Till, 14-year-old black boy brutally beaten to death for whistling at a white woman in 1955, Mississippi. Isaac Hayes, the voice actor for Chef in South Park. He was shit on for quitting South Park. They literally made his character a pedo and killed him off for it. In reality, he had a stroke and couldn't speak. A member of the Church of Scientology was given providence over his medical rights and quit for him because of the Tom Cruise is trapped in the closet episode. Mitt Romney. Turns out Russia was a really big threat, and we probably shouldn't have made fun of him for it. I'd like to think that the government was paying attention as much as Romney, but still using it as political sound bites. But man, that one, sir, apologies. Taylor Swift. For the way people dragged her when Kanye used her name and likeness without permission to essentially make revenge porn and lied about it. When the truth came out a few years later, people silently withdrew from Kanye, and no one acknowledged the damage Swift was put through. Real, measurable. Unable to leave the house, loss of commercial sales, constant misogyny and bullying. All of John Wayne Gacy's victims that were murdered after the man, who had been raped by him and escaped, reported him to the police, and they did absolutely nothing about it. Robert Peast's story has always stuck with me, so him in particular, but every victim that could have been spared if the police force wasn't so incredibly homophobic. It was despicable, deplorable police work. Robert's family sued the police force and won a great deal of money from what I have heard, due to police incompetence contributing to their son's death. Patricia Stalling. They thought she'd poisoned her child with antifreeze, and it ended up being a genetic issue that killed them. They only found out she hasn't done it because she had a baby while in prison, who had the same problem arise. But there was no way she was poisoning him while in prison. Lots of testing and cover-ups. There was much more to it than that, of course, but it's terribly sad. Cameron Todd Willingham. Texas executed him in 2004 for allegedly setting a house fire that killed his 3 kids. Since then, the science used to convict him has been debunked, and it's highly likely that Texas executed an innocent man. Jennifer Aniston. People were all saying it wasn't Brad's fault that he cheated. He wanted kids and she didn't. She felt her career was more important than family. Decades later, we found out the truth. She wanted kids but was infertile. And infertility is a private thing for many, so she got blamed for not being a good enough wife. And it turned out that everyone was just further victimizing her. Infertility is hard enough. It can break up the best of marriages. Having a partner leave you for someone else, also hard enough. It can crush your spirit. But she went through both with quiet dignity, while the public and the press blamed her. George Stinney, a 14-year-old boy falsely accused of murder and sent to the electric chair. His only crime being born black in a racist U.S. Rosalind Franklin figured out DNA before Watson and Crick and was excluded from the Nobel Prize or any acknowledgement of her discovery. Mr. Rogers, all he wanted was for people to be good and to take care of one another. As a society, we have failed him. Amanda Knox, call me naive, but I still don't get how the Italian government can arrest an American citizen, knowing another man raped and murdered. The victim, he was convicted but ended up serving only 13 years. Ignore the evidence, leak her private information, and give her a farce trial. Just why? Jeremy Corbyn. He warned about inequality, war, and injustice before it was popular to care. He was mocked, smeared, and betrayed by the people closest to him. He wasn't perfect, but he was principled. He told the truth when it cost him. We didn't listen. He deserves an apology. Galileo, his scientific discoveries, like observations with his telescope helping to prove that the Earth revolves around the sun, were deemed heretical by the church, so he was condemned to life imprisonment. Nikola Tesla, for how was he treated by his contemporaries, and for how his name is being used today by a company. Balbir Singh Sodhi, he was a Sikh who was murdered in a hate crime a few days after 9/11 for looking Muslim. Everything I read about him makes him seem like such a genuine guy, and I feel anger when I remember what happened to him. It feels like people haven't learned from his murder, since people to this day justify their racism with, it keeps terrorists and criminals away. Ignat Semmelweis literally couldn't get fellow surgeons to wash their hands, despite showing the link to women dying during childbirth. From their lack of hygiene, surgeons, not the women, was shamed and died in an asylum. Richard Jewell, even after having tons of evidence to the contrary, the FBI destroyed his life and publicly accused him of being the Olympic bomber. He lost his job, family, and had to go into hiding. He eventually got a settlement. But once you are accused of something like that, you never really get clear. Konarak Sintasampon. The Asian kid the cops handed back to Jeffrey Dahmer. Stella Liebeck. She is the lady who sued McDonald's after she spilled coffee on herself, resulting in third-degree burns. She initially sued McDonald's only to cover her medical costs, but McDonald's refused to pay out and smeared her, and the media took their side. It later came out that McDonald's was keeping their coffee at ridiculously high temperatures, and they had received over 700 burn complaints prior to this incident. People love to use this as an example of a frivolous lawsuit, but she was in the right and was later awarded over $650,000 from the lawsuit. Courtney Stodden. Her parents allowed her to marry a 51-year-old actor named Doug Hutchinson when she was only 16. She was dragged on multiple talk shows, had her breast examined on live TV to determine whether she had implants, called a slut and horrible names, when in reality, she was a child being sexually abused right in front of America, and no one did anything about it. Sinead O'Connor. Her career went tits up due to her publicly speaking out against the Catholic Church for sex abuse in the 1990s. Years later, we all find out she was absolutely correct and had every justification for the stance she took publicly. Alan Turing, massive contributions to code breaking and computing that saved tens of thousands of lives, probably more. Then he was persecuted after World War II for being gay, where he was chemically castrated and imprisoned. Al Gore. Dude is pretty much single-handedly responsible for securing massive amounts. Research funding in Congress that funded many of the technologies that built the modern web at a time, when virtually nobody could envision the long-term value that would provide. And all anyone remembers about it is a quote he never even said. Tom from MySpace. Dude gave us a clean timeline. No ads, no creepy algorithm. Let us rank our friends. Customize our profiles with music and glittery chaos. Then dipped out rich and drama-free. Meanwhile, we ran into Facebook's arms, like idiots, and now our uncles think lizard. People control the moon. We did Tom dirty. Cameron Todd Willingham. Texas executed him in 2004 for allegedly setting a house fire that killed his 3 kids. Since then, the science used to convict him has been debunked, and it's highly likely that Texas executed an innocent man, Linnell Geeter. He was an electronics engineer who got picked up on his lunch hour for the armed robbery of a fast food restaurant in Texas. Despite evidence to the contrary, he was railroaded by the Texas justice system and was given a sentence of life in prison. While he was serving a life sentence, his co-workers, family and friends worked to get him out. He too worked behind bars. Every time people thought that new evidence or facts should cause Texas to look again at his case, Texas doubled down by saying there was no way they were looking at the case again, under any circumstances. Finally, Morley Safer, a reporter with 60 Minutes, did a story about him that took half of the show. It brought a new flurry of calls for a new trial. Again, the Justice Department in Texas refused. Finally, under overwhelming political pressure, he was retried and found not guilty of the crime. He spent 16 months in jail for. After the trial, the district attorney admitted the had previously found another man in a Houston jail that was guilty of the crime. However, they couldn't charge him because all of the state's witnesses had been coached to identify Geter, so they now had no evidence to charge the actual criminal. After announcing that they were dropping the charges, the DA gave Geter one more middle finger. He was made to wait in jail until a specific judge came home from vacation. Geter sued, and a different judge gave him $24,000, his previous salary for a year. He got nothing else. His court case was dismissed. No one even apologized to him. Michael Jackson. He was never convicted of pedophilia, but the allegations persist. He simply made a theme park and candy store on his estate and invited lots of kids over to enjoy it all with him. That's all perfectly normal.